Welcome to Brat University, a place where we talk about ethical bratting and kink 101 topics. But like any good university, there are some rules that need to be followed while you are here. This is an 18 plus podcast, so if you are under the age of 18, we ask that you stop listening now and come back when you are of age. Second, any of the knowledge in this podcast is based upon the knowledge, experience, and opinions of those who appear on the podcast. Please make sure that you are doing your own research following the listening of this podcast. And last rule, make sure to have fun and enjoy.
Break a heart like an eggshell, cardiac arrest or heart attack. Throw a tantrum, baby doll me up cause I'm a brat. I'm a handful, demi devil pyromaniac. Bitch I am one, throw a tantrum.
Hello everyone and welcome to Brat University, your prime podcast for Brat information. I am your professor Brat-tastic.
I'm Tatiana, the Chaos Brat.
And I'm Havoc Rain.
All right, let's jump into it. We are talking about the Brat Tamer versus Brat Handler title and why there seems to be a shift away from the Brat Tamer title and is shifting into Brat Handler title. So, one of you ladies want to start in on that?
I for one hate the word Brat Tamer. So I think I'm a huge part of that shift because I feel like Tamer and Handler have very different meanings. So for me, Tamer is somebody who wants to change somebody, to permanently adjust behaviors. And for Handler, I think it's just somebody who handles and deals with the behavior, not trying to change it. Because ultimately, why would you try to change the thing that you love to play with?
Right. I told somebody, think like a circus, like a lion tamer. It wants to stop the aggressive lion behaviors. But if you look at like an alligator handler, they know that that animal is totally still capable of like ripping their arm off. So they're not taming them. The behaviors haven't stopped. They are just learning how to handle them and not get bit. And so part of me is like a handler feels much more the type of relationship you would have with a brat.
Yeah, I've always gotten the same impression from the term tamer. And also it's just odd to me because it makes it seem like you're trying to change someone's personality. And I guess there are some brats who want to be tamed in a way, and there are some brats who don't, and I'm definitely one who doesn't, and I'd be pretty sad if I found out that my dom wanted me to change that. So I will use the term tamer because it is used more frequently, but I think I've referred to him as a brat coordinator before and a brat manager. So
yeah,
I think I've referred to them as zookeepers.
Yeah. I've heard someone say like a brat wrangler, and I'm just like, that works too. Basically anybody that works with like dangerous creatures but isn't trying to change the nature of said creature.
Yes.
Absolutely. Like that, I feel like that applies. Honestly, like even with this, I feel like TikTok is a big spearhead where I see that, because I don't see everyone else everywhere like on social media. If I go to like Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they're still very much using like Brat Tamer. And so I feel like the whole Brat Handler thing has been very much stuck on TikTok. And
I feel like it is an adjustment because up here there is Handler, Tamer. I think it's just more of where you're at. So like I know for West Coast, like we're a little bit ahead in a way. So like trends that start on the West Coast don't get all the way to the East Coast until later.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think I've heard a good mix of it, but that includes talking to people who are either like in a different country or a different state. So I think I've heard a big mix at this point, but definitely I've seen that people who have been in the lifestyle longer tend to gravitate towards tamer because that's the kind of phrase that's always been there, I guess.
Yeah. As long as it's like not used for me, you know, like, oh, you're Brat Tamer, blah 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 blah. Like, then it doesn't. I don't care what anybody else calls it, but for me, it is not that. You know.
I don't want if someone called themselves a Brat Tamer, that's fine. I don't want anyone to be my Brat Tamer.
Yes. Yes.
That's not
Exactly.
the title that I want. I want someone who wants that playfulness. Like, my dom lately, and I'm not gonna lie, has been a little more accepting of my brattiness, and I keep it very small. Like, he wouldn't be the type of person that'd be okay with, like, me fucking with him. Like, if he gave me a direction, and, like, malicious compliance is not a thing for him. Like, if he tells me something to do, he wants me to do it. But, like, my sassiness, like, we were in the car the other day, and my notification or the dinging for my seatbelt was going on, and he was like, put your seatbelt on, and I was like, no, I'm above the law, I'm not gonna put my seatbelt on. And he was like, you're gonna put that seatbelt on. And I was like, but I don't wanna. And he was like, well, then I can turn the car around and we can go back and we don't have to go to the surprise I was going to get you. And I was just like, oh no, and clicked my seatbelt. And, like, stuff like that he seems to be okay with, like the sassiness.
Mhm.
But I think it's more with him, the directives. Like, he doesn't want brattiness with his directives. You know? Like, more like serious in scene ones, you know? Not like, hey, you need to put your seatbelt on. Like, not those.
Mhm.
But, like, you know, take your meds, you need to go to sleep, you need to go get up and go clean this. Like, those he doesn't want me to do anything. But I don't know. And so I think it was because I explained the difference to him, like, when you negotiate and we're, you know, talking about handlers, I was like, well, not every handler can handle, you know, every type of animal. You got to figure out what works for you, and, like, what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. And so we kind of broke that down and came up with something that kind of works for the both of us. It's not something he wants every day, but every once in a while I'm allowed to poke. And
I feel kind of like when it comes to the term like brat handler and brat tamer, it comes with, like, also the type of brat that goes with that in a way, because for me, like, brat tamer, I completely ignore a lot of the stuff on TikTok, you know, because I don't. It's most of the time it's fake doms anyways who are brat tamers.
yeah.
Tamers on the internet, and so, like, when I see I'm gonna call them out, like the asshole brats on TikTok that are playing into that nonsense, it's really easy for me to kind of weed out who's legit and who's not when it comes to that, because a lot of brat handlers on TikTok, they hate that stuff. They absolutely
do.
cannot stand it. And, you know, I'm gonna talk about Nathan being one of them. Like, he cannot stand the being an asshole versus being a brat.
Okay, so speaking of him, I did make a video response, and to respond something he said. I did not name him specifically because I wasn't, like, trying to get people to go over and, like, fucking bother him. But I initially had made a comment in his comment section when he was like, you know, tell me that you don't know how to be a brat and you just like being disobedient because of the coffee wars videos. He said, all of you who are pouring out your water or drinking coffee, that's not bratting, that's being disobedient. And so I commented and I said, in some dynamics, you know, brat handler and, like, brat situations, some doms are okay with that. And so I made a video, and I don't know if this is a thing or if this is just a term that I'm coining. So, like, if you're listening, this term just comes from me. I haven't, like, researched into it to figure out if it's real. But I was like, I've always told people bratting is simulated disobedience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On the outside, me drinking my coffee in front of you, to some people, yes, it's disobedient. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't want that type of brat. But to say the people that engage in that aren't brats was where I had an issue. And then after I made that comment, he blocked me.
Oh.
So then I made a video, not directed at him, but it only brought him up in the fact that, hey, I'm making this video because I saw this information and I want to add some nuance to that. because I don't want brats that do that to think, well, I'm being a bad brat. And I'm like, depending on who you're doing that to, but I'm like, and I made the example, I had a bedtime that was 8 o'clock, right? I took a picture of myself with my foot out of the bed touching the floor at like 8:02, and I said, oh no, I'm out of bed, it's past 8 o'clock. Now, that is technically me disobeying a rule. I'm supposed to be in bed by 8 o'clock, and I am thus breaking the rule. But it's not done in such an overly malicious way,
For me, this is me personally. Water is a non-negotiable. Like, I have to drink my water, and any sort of disobedience, because that's what I'm gonna call it. It's disobedience in my dynamics. It is disobedience for me, because that it's a non-negotiable. But that's within my contract.
right?
It's a non-negotiable. So if I'm the brat against something that's a non-negotiable, like, then I look like an asshole. Like, now
Right.
you're not only hurting my feelings because I told you to do something and you're disobeying me, but now you're hurting yourself consequently by not drinking enough water, by not doing this the way that you're supposed to. So I view that from Nathan's point of view, just
Yeah.
because it's a health thing. So, and that's why I get all weird with the coffee wars. Why I'm always like, okay, well, here's like a hydrating alternative. It still tastes good. It's still water, but it's got caffeine in it,
And that's what I told him. I said, you know what? Like, if that's not your cup of tea, sorry, no pun intended, I swear. If that's not your cup of tea, that's okay. But don't call the people that do this and say that they're not brats or they're bratting incorrectly. I'm like, they're bratting incorrectly for you.
Yeah. Like, I have no rules about water because when I was 17, I passed out because I was dehydrated and fractured my skull. And I don't think anybody who's gone through that would say they don't care about drinking water after that.
No.
Because it was directly related. So I'm just terrified to not drink water. But I do have issues with food. And that's one of those things where it's like, that's not negotiable. But
Right.
if there's a brat who, say, doesn't have my history, doesn't have issues with food and dietary restrictions like I do, it might not be a big deal to brat about eating vegetables or something.
Right. And that's why I'm saying you have to tailor that to the brat. Because like you don't have problems drinking water. So like you playing around, oh, I'm drinking coffee, I'm not drinking my water. Your dom probably knows what they're gonna drink water later because they always drink their fucking
we'll be like, your water is right next to you. I literally just saw you drink it.
water.
I'd be like, no, you didn't. What are you talking about?
It's not water, it's vodka. You crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And so even in those moments where you see people drinking the coffee, like I've even done that. So my dom doesn't have anything about me drinking water in totality, like, every day or anything, but he was like, you need to drink water at work, because I was working in a factory and it would get so hot in there.
Yeah.
And there were some days I'm like, dude, I'm gonna pass the fuck out. He's like, have you had water today? And I'm like, no, I had a Monster at like 4 a.m, but and he was like, no, he's like, I'm usually not a person about this, and he's not, because he drinks a fair amount of pop. So he felt like it would be hypocritical for him to talk to me about drinking water. But he's like, even I drink water while I'm at work, because in the summer it gets ridiculous. And so he was like, you are going to drink water. And so I had this water container. He's like, you need to at least drink this much by the time you come back home. So, even then I'd be like, I go get a Monster. He didn't tell me I couldn't have caffeine. So I'm like, I'm just going to drink this today. And he'd be like, no, you're not. And I was like, I don't know. And then he would say something and then I would drop it. Like, I'm going to drink the water because, like everyone says about bratting, I don't want to win. My goal is not to sit there and say, fuck you. Like, why take the rule if I'm just going to say fuck you entirely? It's the pushing the button at the beginning only to be like, yes, I'm going to drink my water. I'm not. Hence why I tell people, I'm like, it's simulated disobedience. I was like, it looked like I was being disobedient because I was talking back, but I'm so going to drink my water because that's what he told me to do.
But I think with the TikTok, it's difficult to understand and convey emotion through
That's
writing.
fair.
And so he probably took what they said as super disrespectful and rude, because it's easy to do that and misconstrue things through writing. I mean, I've done it. I've read something and taken total offense to it, and it wasn't offensive at all.
Well, that's why I made the video. I was like, I'm not saying he's wrong. You know, like I said, not every handler is made, you know, in the wild world, not every handler can handle every type of animal.
Yes.
And like, if you handle alligators, but like you don't want to handle lions, that's fine. But there are other people who are perfectly okay with lions.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I was trying to tell him. I was like, I'm okay with it not being your cup of tea, but saying that it makes you not a brat or like a toxic brat, I was like, that's where I'm like, not entirely.
Yeah, because nothing is universally applicable except consent. You know, that's obviously of paramount
I would say consent
importance.
and communication are like the two that it's just like, yeah, without those two, nothing else fucking works if you don't have consent and communication.
Absolutely. But then even with things like that, like the way I consent to things and communicate with my dom is totally different than it might be with someone else. But I think as long as you have those two basic things, from there, it can kind of be anything. And I think something that I've seen, and this was like back before I started making TikToks, like over a year ago, is that I would see people who would call themselves Brat Tamers express their feelings on brats as, I have genuine anger for the disrespect and it excites me. That's why I like brats. I had actually heard people saying, I genuinely get angry. And to me, that was something that really, like, I was taken aback by that, because personally, I don't believe it's safe to be engaging in kink when you are genuinely angry.
It shouldn't ever get to that.
No.
Yeah. And the amount of people who agreed and thought it was funny was surprising. And I think that's, I don't know, it was very much attitude of, I'm going to change this sub, and if I don't, I'm going to get mad. And that's how I go about my brat taming or whatever.
Yeah. I feel like that's where it's like a very thin line between like kink and abuse when it gets to that point, because now are you disciplining your sub because it's enjoyable for both, or are you taking that extra and you're gonna try and change a behavior now, you know, and assert a dominance over a sub that is now considered abuse to the point where you're going out of contract on stuff, you know. And some subs are new and they think that that's how it's supposed to be. Like, my dom gets mad at me and then beats the shit out of me, or vice versa, you know. My sub gets mad at me and then, you know, because I have a CNC kink, thinks that they can beat the shit out of me, and it's not like that. Not like that at all.
No, and that's even another reason why like I like handler versus tamer, because I feel like when you're taming, like you're always trying to assert yourself and be like the like, okay, this is gonna sound weird, like the dominant in the situation, and but I mean like toxic dominance where you feel like you have to squish down the other person, whereas if you're handling, you have a mutual respect.
You gotta be the Steve Irwin.
Basically. You gotta be the Steve Irwin, okay? Like if you want to have a brat in your life, you need to embrace your inner Steve Irwin.
Just such a respect for the animal, that you're not hurting the animal, but you're doing it for its own safety, you know, well enough to pick up the animal and love the animal, but put it back in its natural habitat, not to disturb,
right?
You know.
and he also learns to handle them so like they don't hurt him either. I'm like, I feel like a brat and their brat it's such a delicate dance. It really is. And like that's what handling is. Taming, I feel like, sounds like you're squishing. You're trying to make the other person inferior and like fall beneath you, and I'm like, I don't like that. I feel like it puts too much of one above the other, and I'm just like, yeah, you may be dominant, but like I still feel like we're equal people. We're both deciding this, you know.
For sure.
I feel like the terms change all the time anyways, so I feel like in like bringing tamer to an end and preferring handler over tamer it's going to become one of those things, you know, we're in the very early stages of that,
Right.
of the shift change in terms. So, you know, it may become a thing. It may become a thing for certain people, you know, or it'll be a community-wide term change. And I know a lot of like the old heads will probably stick to their old terms, and that's fine as long as they're not hurting anybody. I don't see why it would be a problem.
I don't either, but I think it, you know, when it gets around and more people start using it, it will help me find the right people for me. Like, you know, if I see this group over here and they're all saying tamer, and then this group over here and they're all using handler, I'm like, well, I'm going to go with that group. You know, not that the other group is bad, but, you know, just going around people like me and like, okay, so they have the same idea about bratting as I do. So, you know, if I was looking for a partner or whatever, I'm like, okay, I want to be over here.
I think the title of your role kind of describes what you want in your dynamic to an extent.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people who are like, I hate labels. I don't like being put in boxes. I love labels because I think they're fun descriptors.
Yes.
And so with my dom, if someone called him a brat tamer, he'd get it because he knows what they mean. But his initial thought is, I'm not taming anything. I'm just managing this crazy mess over here.
Right.
And like, he doesn't have anything to prove. It's not like a fight for who's in charge. We both know he's in charge. I'll admit it eventually. But I think when I hear Brat Tamer, it does describe a desire to change. And he doesn't have that desire, and that wouldn't make me happy. And I know there are some brats, like I've seen some brats on TikTok who are like, oh, I was tamed. Like, I am a full service sub all the time now. Not that that's like the natural outcome of being a brat. Not like all brats are actually Secret Service subs. Some brats are not service subs. I'm really not. The service I do is just part of my personality, I guess, like cleaning and stuff. But I think a lot of brats I know, they don't want to be told that they can't be themselves. And brats are some of the most expressive, creative people I've met.
I think also, I was just thinking about this. I was like, why would people want to be called a brat tamer? But I think at the end, it's like, I've conquered the brat. I made the brat submit. But it's like, we will submit anyways. We want to submit, just with a little bit of fight, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's all. Like,
I feel like I told someone, I'm like, I want to be able to tell people, you know, I went down fighting, you know, I just didn't get like the shit kicked, you know, didn't go down in like the first round or whatever, you know, I'm like, I went down fighting. Like, I went down, and that's where I wanted to be, you know. I was throwing that fight, but like, I at least want to say that I put up a fight, you know?
Yeah, and then I see some people who are just, you know, I'm a brat, but no dom can make me submit. I'm like, okay, then you're not a brat. You are not a sub, because submissives submit. Like, at the end of the day, that's what we do. That is what we do. And we like to do it.
They want to with the right person. And if someone's just saying, no one can make me submit,
like,
then do you want to be a sub?
Yeah. You're in the wrong position. Switch sides.
I saw someone who was claiming to be a brat on TikTok, and it wasn't like a big account or anything. Like, they maybe had a couple hundred people following them. So, like, I didn't do a whole lot. You know, I wasn't trying to like warn people about this person necessarily. But I commented, I was like, this is not the vibe, because in the video, her dom had given her some sort of directive and she was just being blatantly disrespectful and disobedient. Like, it wasn't playful. I forgot what the directive was, and it might have been like a water coffee thing, and they were just like, no, I'm not like gonna do what you said. It had all this like attitude, and just, I'm like, bratting is playful. You're not trying to be a bitch. And I'm just like, I feel like so many brats have it twisted, and they're like, well, I'm a bitch, so I'm a brat. I'm like, no, you're just a bitch.
I have a very, quote, alpha personality, and like my bratting is so different than my personality is. I mean, it's got some of my personality in there, but when I'm bratting, like I rarely am like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Most of the time it's like, ugh, or like grunts, or like big puffy sighs that I don't want to do something, but it's never, no, I'm not doing that, because that is not okay to me. Like, just straight up, I know when my children say, no, I'm not gonna do that, it makes me irate. And so like, why would I want to do that to somebody else? That's how I think of it.
I think the worst I've ever gotten, because I'm definitely one of those brats, is I would say, what are you going to do? Make me? And even then, it's not me outright going, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, if I ever outright was just like, no, my dom would probably stop and be like, is there something wrong? Because I don't say no, because that's not the goal. I'm not trying to be, directly disobedient. Like, I'm going to go do it, just like you said, just, want to make it a little difficult.
I'll say no while I'm going to do the thing.
Yeah,
I've done that.
And then I'm like putting my clothes away anyway.
Right.
I'm not doing this because you told me to. Nope, not at all.
I can think of 6 other different liquids I'd rather be drinking right now. But while I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't really have a problem with water, because
I drink water, honestly. Like, I'm happy that he made me drink water at work. It has me drinking water just kind of all the time and being conscious more about my water intake, because, I did hit that point where, like, I almost made myself pass out because I wasn't drinking water.
Yeah.
I was like, I need
That's
to
scary.
drink more water. And also, I never realized how good water tasted when, like, you're genuinely thirsty.
Yes.
Like, when you're working in a factory and you are sweating bullets all day, and then you finally go get some cold water. It's like life in a bottle. And it's so delicious. I think one time I hurt myself because I drank too much water at once, because I was just that thirsty. And I was just like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But it was delicious, but I shouldn't have done that. So, no, like, I will be one of the people to admit, yes, I'm a brat and I do drink my water. I just like being playful and pretending that I'm not going to drink my water.
I have a caffeine. I do have a caffeine problem. Like, 100%
right?
Caffeine problem. But I do drink my water with it.
Right.
I buy 24 packs of Red Bull and I drink all of them. But I do drink water.
Right. I took a picture one time and I posted it in the Discord, and it was a big bottle of water and like a freaking monster, and I was like, life is all about moderation and balance. I was like, I got both.
Yep, that's how I feel.
All right, do either of you have anything you would like to add about the tamer versus handler topic? Just anything on that?
Both are fine, just don't be an asshole.
Yeah, I think it's all about what works for you and your dynamic, and obviously these are just our preferences and interpretations and experiences of when we hear those terms.
Exactly. We are not saying if you use those terms you are a horrible person. Use whatever term works for you. Just like Tatiana said, it's just how we feel and things we have seen in at least the TikTok community that is floating around there. But also, like Habit said, don't be a dick, and everything will be okay. Make sure you have consent, and make sure you're communicating all your boundaries and your safe words and things like that, and everything should be all right. All right, there's our bell, And so that means the end of our class today. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a reminder, I am Brat-tastic.
I'm Tatiana the Chaos Brat.
And I'm Havoc Rain.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Did you like what you heard? Then make sure to never miss a class. You can find us on one of your favorite podcatchers, which include Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and Good Pods. You can also find us on Twitter and TikTok at Brat University. Make sure to look in the show notes below to join our Discord server. We can't wait to hear from you.